Post-war liberalism is a commitment to both racial egalitarianism and pluralism within American society, and a commitment to a mild form, a moderate form of economic egalitarianism. So post-war liberalism are the policies, particularly by the Democratic Party, that were meant to advance both those ends. The policies of liberalism that I'm talking about are sort of abstract beliefs, right? But they have to be made real in legal systems through public policy, right? And what Forging Rivals is about it's about looking at two of the legal systems that were explicitly designed to address issues of racial egalitarianism and mild economic egalitarianism, right? So one of the systems for creating some forms of economic justice that emerges from the New Deal is labor law, right? The National Labor Relations Act. And then you see in the post-war period, starting in the 1940s, a whole host of legal systems, particularly at the state level, but also at the beginning at a lesser extent at the federal level, aimed at promoting racial egalitarianism. And so states begin passing civil rights laws in 1945. New York State passes one, and then you see throughout the 1950s other states hop on board with passing laws that promote anti-discrimination in public accommodations or anti-discrimination in employment. And then in 1964 you get the Civil Rights Act of 1964, which is a real genuine commitment to racial egalitarianism. So you see post-war liberalism is not just sort of an idea, right? Post-war liberalism is what the Democratic Party is putting into effect as matters of public policy during the period from 1945 sort of through the 1960s. The cornerstones of post-war labor unions is the idea of seniority, right? Putting within collective bargaining agreements provisions that give out benefits and give job security based on how long you've been at the job. And the process of writing a collective bargaining agreement is a majoritarian process, right? After the contract is written, it has to be passed by a majority of folks. It's also really one of the central premises of promoting economic egalitarianism after World War II, right? Because it really dramatically limits the employer's discretion in terms of firing workers, in terms of reducing their pay, and that sort of thing. So in that sense, it's progressive, it's liberal. At the same time, seniority really has a negative impact on the rights of African American workers, and particularly in an environment where they've been discriminated against traditionally, right? Because the nature that discrimination took was that African American workers were frequently hired only in circumstances where there was almost full employment, and consequently last hired, first fired is one of the premises of seniority. So African American workers would almost never advance up along the seniority ladder, and so they would rarely gain the benefits of seniority, right? And so consequently here you have this element of post-war liberalism, seniority, which really doesn't work to the advantage of African American workers, and consequently African American workers really don't see much of a reason to invest in it. And in fact, the opposite, they see seniority as something that seems designed to mean that they're fired first when the economy turns down. What I did was selected sort of 5 different vignettes. There's sort of 5 stories about conflict between African American civil rights organizations and labor unions. And they take place over time. That is, say, the first one is from World War II in 1945, and the last one ends in 1975. And I wanted, within each of those vignettes, to tell a story that people would want to hear, that people would want to read. I think one of the most important things for historians is to not give up on writing narratives. I think the reason why people like history, and particularly the public at large likes history, is because it's a story, it's a narrative. And what I was trying to do by sort of telling these vignettes was the very abstract ideas that can percolate through the book about sort of group rights versus individual rights, or conflicts within liberalism, or legal systems that are structured in ways that conflict with one another. So those ideas are so abstract. And I wanted to see if by telling a series of stories, I could make those very abstract ideas become much more concrete.